Aloha mai kako, a como mai to curtain call, a program of reviews, previews, interviews, and features of and or with the great art and artists on Maui and beyond. I'm Paul James Brown. King Kekaulike Dramaʻs second period intermediate acting class is presenting In the Hood, a contemporary family-friendly comedy by Pat Lydersenʻs. Ms. Lydersenʻs has been a director, playwright, and actor for more than 20 years, specializing in theater for youth. Currently, she is artistic director of the Parkdale Player Youth Theater in Encinitas, California. She is clearly a prolific playwright. So her choice as one of the few published playwrights who isn't writing for Broadway, but specializes in youth theater, is a perfect one for Chris Kepler and the King Kekaulike Dramaʻs. He has a huge program and needs scripts with many parts, and this one has 41 characters. In the Hood is about a close-knit community in an urban setting. They live at 159th Street between 42nd and 43rd Avenue. It consists of a Mexican cafe run by Mrs. Mendez, Constance Popar Vasquez, a junk shop called Houdini's Emporium, run by Mr. Houdini, who insists he is the long-lost son of Harry Houdini, Sidon Smith, a fruit and vegetable market run by the irascible Mrs. Moskowitz, Sonny Baresi, and an apartment building inhabited by a grumpy old woman, Mrs. Lutz, Misty Best, and Jimmy, Isaiah Wallang Krebs, and his sister Sally, Lola Maselli, incipient documentary filmmakers. All of these buildings are owned by Mrs. Feinberg, Jolie Ryan Sachs. She is the most fantastic, and I mean that in its most complete sense, as in wonderful and a total fantasy, landlord in the history of the world. She hasn't raised the rents in 20 years, and when Jenny, a nerd and a computer geek, Bella Guzman Anderson, shows up looking for a place because her roommate left and cannot afford the $1,000 a month rent, Mrs. Feinberg offers her a place for $250 a month. When she says she can't pay a security deposit, Mrs. Feinberg laughs and says, quote, "Security deposit? I never charge a security deposit." See what I mean about a fantasy? This entire scene is narrated by Joe, Ethan Ida, and his sister Josie, McKenna Hartwick, who also served as Mr. Kepler's assistant director. They lead a type of Greek chorus of neighborhood teens who rap the setup or conclusion of each scene. Ms. Hartwick plays a mean Home Depot plastic bucket. Two other characters from the Hood are Mrs. Tagliatelle, Olivia Richardson, who is an indefatigable entrepreneur vendor who crosses the stage with her cart at the opening of most of the scenes, selling her next bright idea, and the former actress who now teaches and is slightly ostentatious and pretentious, Mrs. Bowman Kepler, who insists on calling herself Mrs. Bowman and consistently corrects anyone who mispronounces it, who comes to have Mrs. Feinberg care for her pet goldfish, while she has a very important audition. Into this idyllic scene comes Guy Jantic, Jaden Takushi, a developer who intends to capitalize on Mrs. Feinberg's generosity by foreclosing on her buildings, which are about to be seized by the IRS for not paying her taxes, and building a, quote, state-of-the-art parking garage. The community comes together to help as best they can through a car wash, a lemonade stand, a hilarious Lady Macbeth monologue by Mrs. Bowman, and a duct tape escape by Mr. Houdini, all of which doesn't come near to her IRS debt. Will the neighborhood be destroyed? Will Mrs. Moskowitz have to become a vendor? Will Houdini disappear for good? Has Mrs. Mendez poured her last espresso? Will Miss Lutz have to find a new window to shout from? Will Miss Bowman have to find someone else to care for her goldfish? You can find out by coming to Upcountry's Answer to Castle Theater, the King Kekaulike Performing Arts Center in Pukalani, next Friday or Saturday at 7 p.m. or Sunday at 3. Bring cash or a check, adults $10 and students $6. Tickets are only available at the door. As the fantastic Mrs. Feinberg, Ms. Ryan Sachs finds her kindness and generosity in every moment. Even when she meets the disheveled IRS collector Alden Sanvitoto, she asks him in for tea. Her tone is perfect for this character. As Houdini, Master Smith is indefatigable, and his hopping him while chained was quite an acrobatic feat. His Houdini is appropriately over the top, and even though the great Houdini was born in 1874, he continues to insist he is the long-lost son of the great magician, as he fails time and again to successfully perform his alleged father's most simple tricks. Ms. Baresi gives us a Mrs. Moskowitz who is obsessed with the quality of her vegetables and fruit and doesn't brook any criticism of them. And when Houdini bruises her zucchini taking his chains from her back room, she lets him have it. It's a hilarious moment. Ms. Pupor Vasquez is always there for Houdini, encouraging him in his failures and being willing to comfort him. Hers is another character we would all like to know. Ms. Richardson brings an undying stick-to-itiveness to Mrs. Tagliatelle and shows us her creativity and ability to find something to sell. Ms. Guzman Anderson's Jenny is marvelously geeky and charming, and her Deus Ex Machina role is revealed with just the right amount of surprise. The narrators, Master Ida and Ms. Hartwick, lead the raps and provide context for each scene. Master Takuchi's bad guy is more comical than evil. The 10-gallon hat he wears looks like it could actually hold more than 10 gallons. His braggadocio swagger is an apt choice for this character, who is more a caricature. The brother, Jimmy Cameron Person, Master Walling Krebs, and his sister, Sally, Ms. Maselli, everything else, work in concert and harmony with each other, she slating each scene and he recording it for posterity. Finally, we come to Ms. Kepler's Miss Baumann. The hardest thing in the theater to do is to act a bad actor. Finding the balance between actually being bad and acting bad is such a delicate balance. Ms. Kepler performed like the great Philippe Petit, walking on a tightrope between the Twin Towers. She found that sweet spot and created a thoroughly convincing real phony who has no idea what she is doing, as she uproariously demonstrated in her acting class, but is going about it believing absolutely in its correctness. Her physicality, elocution, and projection were pitch perfect. Bravissima. King Kekaulike Productions are group student-teacher endeavors, both on and off stage, and all of the elements, sets, costumes with the help of Betty Russo, props, lighting, sound, everything that goes into a successful production are done by them. They learn, produce, and perform. My acting teacher, Suzanne Shepard, would watch our scenes and then she would ask us between drags on her cigarette if we had fun. If we hesitated for a moment, she would retort, "Neither did we." Chris Kepler consistently creates work with these upcountry students where they are obviously loving every moment they are on stage in front of an audience. And that is absolutely infectious. You cannot help but to laugh and have a good time. Don't forget, you have to go to the box office to purchase tickets for the remaining 3 performances, Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 3. The house opens 30 minutes prior to curtain. Go and support these young people and have some fun while you're at it. Well, that's Curtain Call for this week. Thanks to Michael and Vohijas of Maui Photographer LLC for the terrific photos, and to you for tuning in. Don't forget to get tickets in person at King Kekaulike Performing Arts Center before the shows. I'm Paul James Brown. Ahui ho!